again to the BATTASS Podcast, the Batman the Animated Series Show podcast. My name is Clay McCormack, and with me is
Sean Murphy.
And we are talking about Batman the Animated Series, and this is our second episode.
Yep.
Today we'll be covering two episodes of the show, On Leather Wings and Christmas with the Joker. Where should we start? You want to just jump right into it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's start off with On Leather Wings. In On Leather Wings, the breakdown is a mysterious bat-like creature terrorizes Gotham City, causing the police force to pursue Batman. The Dark Knight must find the real perpetrator to clear his name. And it was written by Mitch Bryan and directed by Kevin Altieri.
Nice.
So, this is the first real episode of the show that we see. Mm-hmm. The last episode here we covered was the short they did to sell it.
Yeah, that pitch.
Right, which was, as we had talked about, they really nailed everything right from the get-go. But this is the first time that we see everything in action.
Right. Did you think? What do you think of the changes they made from the pitch material to this first episode?
Well, yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because the pitch material sort of reworked and turned into the majority of the opening credits.
Right.
And I think we should definitely talk about that credit sequence because that's like the perfect inroad to this show.
Yeah, it was like a nice, cleaned up, more noir version of the pitch that they did.
Right. Yeah, they kind of simplify things, and the animation's a lot sharper. You don't have Batman dancing like a hippie around bullets.
Yeah.
You've got these nice hard shadows of thugs punching and him, just the silhouette ducking out of the way, and it's really nice.
Yeah, they went out of their way not to reveal him until the lightning strikes at the very end.
Right.
It's really the first time you can see him.
Yeah, they do and on top of the images, it's the first time that we get to hear the music. That's going to be a big part of the show.
Right.
And I'm not exactly sure. I can never figure out if the theme to the show is just the Danny Elfman theme or if it's reworked, because it's very similar to the Danny Elfman Tim Burton theme.
Right, or if it's Shirley Walker, who worked with him to do a lot of the stuff, I think.
Right, and she'll be the one doing the music for the remainder of the show.
Yeah, I'm anxious to talk about her later, especially some of the specific little theme songs she gave Batgirl when Batgirl shows up. And Clayface's music. It's really distinct.
Well, we'll talk about the next when we cover Christmas with the Joker. The theme for the Joker is very distinct, and it follows him everywhere.
Yeah. I was actually sort of impressed that they didn't go with the Joker for episode 1 because I think the temptation is to do it. But as you were saying last night, in a way, the Joker would have hogged the spotlight. And in this first episode, we almost need a quiet villain that doesn't talk, just like Man-Bat does.
Right.
To really put the focus on Batman, because we really don't know who he is yet, nor do the cops.
Right. Man-Bat is a very interesting choice because he's not even like a second tier. He's almost a third tier villain.
Yeah.
Because you'd think you've got the Joker as the obvious one to go for, but they don't go Penguin, they don't go Catwoman, they don't go the Riddler or Two-Face. They dig pretty deep.
Right.
And as far as I know, this is the first time Man-Bat has been on any screen. He was created in the 70s. Yeah. But this is the first time they've used him in any sort of other media. Yeah,
I like that they kept it confusing. Like at the very beginning, if you don't really know what's going on, it looks almost like the Man-Bat is Batman. Mm-hmm. Like they keep it sort of vague, and they keep the cops guessing as to who or what this thing is. And I thought that was a really smart choice to go with Man-Bat, and probably a pretty ballsy one, I guess.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I think they almost use him as almost a misdirect.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of misdirect that, if you're in the know, obviously Man-Bat doesn't look like Batman. Right. But it's enough of a misdirect that it works within the story that they're telling.
Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit about this before, how it's really interesting that there's no pilot for this show the way you would have a pilot now. There's no origin for Batman, or the world or anything. It's very much just you're expected to know who Batman is. you're expected to know what the world is, and they just drop you right in.
Right. Yeah. It's Batman is in progress. There's already a Robin. Well, I guess in the next episode there is. There's already an Alfred. Batman's established. In fact, like, I don't think that they really got too much into Bruce's past, except for a window here and there through the entire series. And I don't think it was until Mask of the Phantasm where they really fleshed out his past. You know, and I think that that's really interesting that they didn't go linear with the whole thing.
Yeah, and that Mask of the Phantasm, I think, is something we'll probably cover. After we finish this first chunk of season, then we'll do Mask of Phantasm. I was thinking we would do the show and then kind of break it up by doing one of the movies and then, you know, continue the show. So we'll definitely be covering that at some point.
Right.
But yeah, the thing that really struck me about this is, well, there's no, it's not really an origin or a pilot episode. They do a really good job of setting up a world, a Gotham City where Batman isn't immediately the good guy.
Right.
By having that plot point where Man-Bat is breaking into these places and stealing stuff, and obviously he's a giant bat, so everyone assumes giant Batman.
Right.
And that, for the episode, creates this tension between the cops and Batman, which is a really good introduction to that whole thing, because they work everybody into this episode, pretty much. I mean, you get a really good feel for Gotham.
Yeah.
And so Gordon is there, Bullock is there, and if there wasn't an immediate tension between the cops and Batman, I think it would be really ham-fisted to fit those guys in there.
Right.
But they do a good job with it.
Yeah. I noticed that Alfred's voice was not the guy they eventually ended up going with. I forget both of their names, actually. But Alfred in this, what struck me was that he was set up to be the comic relief. Wait, are we talking about... Oh, wait.
Yeah,
is he in this one, too?
Yep, he does it. And he's that character.
Same thing, okay.
Yeah, he's kind of a prick.
Yeah, I know. He's kind of an asshole. What did you think of the blimps in the opening and how they sort of ended it the same way they began it in the sky? What did you think of that kind of circle?
It was great. I mean, I think they give you a really great sense of the mood of Gotham. I mean, those big blimps are just... I don't know why more people don't use them and stuff, because they're so cool.
They're so beautiful.
Yeah, there's something about them that...
Yeah.
It's like this weird... It's not quite steampunk, but it's like this weird... Blimps seem to be this weird area where it's a very old technology.
Right.
But it's also, for some reason, represents like the future.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's very Metropolis or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, Blade Runner, that big blimp thing is very kind of weird and old. And
also, I think that it sets the mood in a way that a helicopter couldn't, because helicopters are just so noisy that you could technically have done the whole episode in a helicopter, but by using a blimp, it's quiet, it's lonely up there. You really get a chance to like play with the mist, sort of streaking off of the balloon as it starts to go through the clouds. You know, and I think especially it highlights the atmosphere of Gotham, especially these the first initial run of the series before they streamlined it. It seemed like they really had a nice cloudy, hazy effect over everything, which I thought was really amazing. Yeah,
and that the blimp really, it's a helicopter would be too aggressive.
Yeah,
you know, and that really is a much different feel, whereas. They give you those really nice panning shots over Gotham City, and if you're following something flying, you can't really do those shots as passively or as quietly as you can with a blimp.
And when Batman and Man-Bat show up, it's so noisy, and it's like this nice quiet scene of these two guys in a blimp, and suddenly there's just this loud shriek out of nowhere. That scene wouldn't play out that same way if you had a noisy helicopter.
Yeah,
you know, you have guys with helmets and you know, earphones, and they're talking on the radio, and they had that too, but something about the blimp really made it a different scene, a different kind of scene.
And Man-Bat would probably just fly into those propeller blades.
That's true. It is that episode would have been really short.
Yeah. You were saying last night, you pointed out that they do a really good job of populating Gotham City.
Yeah, I thought that the first one of the first scenes is the security guard who's recording himself late night on patrol and just doing his radio voice. It's silly, but to dedicate animation time to that, I think, is really significant because it's not obvious. And the biggest character for me in Gotham City is Gotham City itself. It's not Batman.
Yeah.
Like when people ask me my favorite Batman villain, I usually answer Gotham, which I know is not the right answer, but to me it is. And there was a couple times there was some lab assistants who were making out. Batman flies by or something, and I really appreciate when they do that. I don't know if the comics do it enough, but I haven't read everything.
Yeah, it's tough to do. I find it can be tough to do in the comics because I don't know. I feel like in this you have a little bit more. It's easier to get across characterization quickly because you've got voices and stuff, and it might be a little bit easier to spend some time with a peripheral character. Yeah. But yeah, they do a really great job. Even at the beginning, the guys piloting the blimp are your first intro to whatever Man-Bat is. Yeah. And they've always done a good job in this show of their peripheral characters being fairly memorable. There's more of them in Christmas with the Joker. There's
the reporter.
Yeah, and the woman who they think he's going to get robbed and stuff. But we'll talk about that later.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So I'm writing and drawing my own Batman, and I don't have a lot of scenes that just show Gothamites, I should say, just doing day in, day out. And I wish I had like an extra 3 pages just to show people hanging their laundry, buying soup at the bodega, and really making Gotham feel lived in. And I think the reason is, I think that writers are just tempted to get to the story because you don't know if this will ever be your last Batman that you can do. So you want to squeeze in everything you can. And page space is very precious. So I can see why it doesn't get addressed very much, and I'm guilty of doing it myself. What I've tried to do to balance that out is, like, I have a scene where there are these news reporters talking about this Batman sighting. And on the last shot, I zoom out so you can see the cameraman and the people on set recording the sound and eating their lunch. Even though they don't have any lines, I just wanted to try to remind people that Gotham is populated with average folks. Right. Because in my story, the Gotham citizens make up a big part of what happens.
Yeah. And I think you can see how big of a character Gotham is and how important it is to portray it as such if you go back and you look at the movies. Because if you go back and you look at the Tim Burton Batman movie, or both of them, as much as I love them, Gotham City is like the size of a single, backlot at Warner Brothers Studio. Yeah. The Monarch Theater where his parents get killed.
It's in every shot.
Is in every shot. Yeah. The only time you see the Batmobile racing through Gotham City, he's kind of like going 10, 15 miles an hour through Gotham City. There's a lot of people there. It's got kind of that same population that Blade Runner does. But if you were to compare those two things, Blade Runner works with that claustrophobia because they're really trying to lean into that, whereas Gotham needs to feel big. It needs to feel like there's crevices you can get lost in. Yeah. And they do a really good job in the cartoon of doing that. They don't really get it. They don't really hit that note in the movies until Nolan, because he turned Gotham City into an amalgamation of real cities. So it wasn't on a backlot. It was actually, they were shooting in New York. They were shooting in Pittsburgh. So it was, they could be on the road, on the street. Yeah. And have those nice sprawling large shots. Right. Yeah. Which you can do in animation. Right. And they do a really nice job. Yeah.
I was going to ask, do you think that Batman works better as a cartoon, as a movie, or as a comic? Ooh. And this is totally an opinion question. I don't think there's any right answer.
I don't know. My first instinct is comic, because the thing that I think makes him the best superhero character is you can apply Batman to any story and any type of story, and it always works. You can do a crime story. You can do a monster story. You could do a sci-fi story, and he always works for some reason. I mean, there's a couple things you have to give and take about what you're willing to extend your disbelief to. Right. But that's not. I don't feel like there are so many. There's a lot of characters that I don't feel you can do that with. Like, I don't feel like it works that well with Spider-Man. I don't think it works that well with Superman. You really cared for that. But if you send Batman to space, I'll buy it. Why not?
Yeah, I could never do Batman in space. I'm one of one of those people that feels like Batman only works in Gotham. The minute you introduce superheroes into his world, I think it starts to change very quickly. Even monsters. there was one episode later on where there's magic, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And magic, to me, fucks up the classic crime detective noir. Like, I get the impulse to want to put Batman with the Justice League, and it's fine but you need to approach it in an entirely different way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I think each of those different types of story you can put him in, they do require a different approach to the character. But I think the core of the character still works.
Right.
Because he is, fairly... the stripped down version of Batman is very simple.
Right.
And it's very hard to mess with that and have it not work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that Batman, for me, works best as a cartoon or as a comic. We know when they try to flesh him out and show all his SWAT gear and his tactical equipment, and some of the stuff works, but I mean, even in the Burton version, there's a few shots where they animated a cartoon to be him.
Oh, yeah.
Like the cape spin when he's looking down.
Down shot of Gotham.
Yeah. Like, there's something about having to hand animate something, or even with Flash, I guess, and just break it down into simple shapes and give an impression of a figure in an alleyway rather than try to film it, And I think there are ways to do it, but I don't know. My personal taste is I like sort of a creative spin on it, and I think that when you flesh it out into the real film, you end up it starts to fray a bit for me. You know? Like, I don't like when his neck is too thin. I don't care if he can turn his head. And Michael Keaton to me looks like the best Batman mask, and he's always lit from above.
Right.
To me, that's pretty much the epitome.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday too, but the design of Batman. People are always arguing about, oh, well, underwear versus no underwear, blah, 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 what should the belt look like?
Yeah.
Basically, everything from the ribs down on Batman doesn't matter because he's at his best when you've got that Tim Burton style light from above or from the side where it's accenting the top of the cape.
Yeah.
And he's meant to be a force, a shape.
Right.
You're not supposed to see all the every limb moving at every time at all times.
Yeah. So I never thought about that. So when I showed you my character designs for my Batsuit costume, I thought I put a lot of work into how high his boots are and the way his belt works, and I got through the whole first issue, and I never really got to show the costume. I never had that panel where it reveals like Sean Murphy's Batman.
Yeah.
And I think when you said that, it doesn't matter from the waist down what he looks like. That's exactly right. And I went through all of these shots with you, and I'm like, oh my god, like I never really lit his legs once.
Yeah.
Like Batman did not enter a light room. If he did, it was cast shadows, and it doesn't really matter because the Batman's costume is shadows. It's not necessarily tights.
Right. And that's why if you look at his costume and how the different ways it's drawn and represented, it doesn't really matter what it's made out of because the intent is always the same, which is to create that one shape.
Right.
So it can be all mechanical and made out of armor and it still works, or it could be a sweatshirt and a homemade cowl and cape and it still works.
Yeah.
And I think they picked the way they depict him in the show. I think is pretty much pretty as close to ideal as you can get.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you. I have 4. I think there's only basically 4 different kinds of Batman people sort of funnel into. One is classic, which is tights. Usually it's the kind of stuff you see on underwear, and it's licensed for kids' pajamas.
Yep.
Jim Lee art, Silver Age type stuff too. Then you have tactical Batman, which is sort of Chris Nolan, which is Arkham Asylum, where you can see his armor, you can see the buttons and the pop rivets and the gear. The third one would be an animated version, which is obviously this one. And the fourth one for me is the Phantom Batman, which to me the Phantom one it's very impressionistic. It's probably encapsulated very well by artists like Sam Keith. It's like heavy shadows. It really works Batman into the environment, and it doesn't really matter where his belt is or what his chest emblem looks like. It's really just a fog.
Yeah. It's
designed that way, and he almost looks different in each panel. The sizes of the ears will change depending on what's needed. It just doesn't matter. And I was going to ask you, like, which out of the 4 do you think your Batman would be?
I think I would probably be closer to that last one, where he's more of a phantom.
Yeah.
But the thing that I like, again, the thing that makes him work is that he works in all of those things.
Right.
And I always thought it was really interesting how you could have the more 70s Neil Adams type where it's just, skin tight, whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you were to push in and do a close-up and have him, like, pull something off of his arm to reveal armor, you'd totally buy it.
Yeah.
There's something about the costume that it works in everything. But I prefer the shadowy, phantom-like. Like, going back to, not to talk too much about the movies, but going back to, the Tim Burton Batman versus the Chris Nolan Batman, I think Burton's Batman cared more about style than practicality.
Right.
And I think Nolan's Batman cares more about practicality than style.
Yeah,
and I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. And I don't think they're four distinct so much as there's usually a mix of some of those elements. Like, even for mine, I try to go Phantom as much as I can.
Yeah.
But inevitably, he'll get back to the Batcave, he'll take off the cape, he'll put his keys on the counter, and, you have to see how he works eventually.
Right.
And, like, you can still try to hide it, but eventually you're going to need to show him reaching into his belt for smoke bombs or grabbing his bat hooker, or, So, yeah, for me, it's a mix of probably tactical Batman, but mostly with Phantom Batman, if I can help it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Batman...
nice segue.
Yeah, nice segue. Yeah. We should probably talk about the character himself as he appears in this episode, because this is the first time we get to hear the Kevin Conroy Batman voice.
But we first hear it not out of Batman, out of the guy behind the steering wheel
driving
of the
blimp.
Yeah, literally a steering wheel.
Where it's interesting. I don't think you'd ever pick that up on first watch, but his voice is so unique that going back, there's no way to miss it.
I think they only hired 3 people, and they're like, oh shit, who can do a pilot? Conroy hasn't left yet, so let's just ask him to do it.
It's like the early days of The Simpsons, where if you go back and you watch some of the early episodes, you can hear Lisa and Bart and those voices doing other voices, where now it's like, oh, that doesn't work. But in the first season, nobody knew the voices well enough. But yeah,
I think it's a budgeting thing, and also not planning ahead to hire enough extras if you need to. And I know eventually Bruce Timm does a few voices too. He might even do some in this. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Kevin Conroy's just got such a distinct voice. But it's funny because he pulls off a varying amount of Batmans. Yeah. He's got goofy Bruce Wayne, and then later on it's business Bruce Wayne, and then it's like firm voice Batman, and then right now we're still in like smoky, whispery Batman. Right. Which I like the best.
And one of the things they do here, which is as far as most representations outside of movies go, well, I mean, depending on how you feel about how Michael Keaton played Batman, you could argue he didn't really divide the two as much as he probably could. But this, I mean, they do a really good job of separating Bruce Wayne from Batman, which I can't think of another cartoon. Even in the Adam West one, it's they were not really trying that hard to break them up.
I think that they were thinking of him as Clark Kent in a way. Yeah. Like they goofed him up enough to be like, goofy Clark Kent. I don't know if the Adam West version, if Bruce Wayne was the same or different than the persona of Batman.
He was a little different. It was not as is not as pronounced as this. I don't really think they were thinking about that too much.
Which Bruce Wayne do you prefer? Like the cool Don Draper one of the later seasons, or do you like Goofy Bruce?
I appreciate Goofy Bruce.
There's an action figure.
That sounds like a band name.
He falls into the pool.
Yeah.
he comes with a banana peel.
One of the best things, again, to move to the movies, the thing I loved about Batman Begins was Christian Bale went out of his way to make a very hard line between Batman and the cover, at least the cover story Bruce Wayne. Right. Where he was the playboy, he was a little bit goofy. And I think that goes a long way to taking the character seriously, because it's an important part. That's what makes it believable, Right.
Yeah, I guess I always preferred the later version where he's more like Don Draper. It's almost like he's still in costume, actually. Mm-hmm. Like that's the sort of Bruce I'm writing into my book, but I do appreciate Goofy Bruce or Playboy womanizer Bruce.
Yeah, I think he might be a little too goofy here. I think they might go a little too far. But it is a good way to introduce you to the concept of them being different people. Yeah. The one detail that I love is that when they're in the Batcave, Alfred, Batman says something about, I got to go out and check, blah, blah, blah. and Alfred says, "I'll cancel Master Wayne's date with Bunny or whatever."
Yeah.
He refers to Bruce Wayne as a different person than Batman. He doesn't say "your," he says Master Wayne's.
Right. Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Is this right after or before Batman answers the phone?
Oh, yeah.
Bruce's voice, like, "Hey Billy, you ready for badminton tomorrow?"
That was kind of off-putting. That was kind of weird.
Yeah, and they didn't move the camera. Like, it was very obvious what they were doing. I don't know. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think it works, but it's just so strange to hear that goofy voice coming out of, I am the Knight Batman.
Yeah, for sure. Man, the animation quality in this episode was insane.
Yeah.
From the SWAT team, the guys who grab their guns and go hup, 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 up into the building, to that like big yellow truck that.
Oh, the paddy wagon?
The over-designed, awesome
has like
deco.
eight lights in the front.
Yeah. Did they ever make an action figure out of that?
I don't know. They probably will. They're making them out of everything else.
It's so distinct, that thing. And then finally, the chase at the end where Batman has hooked himself onto Man-Bat.
Yeah.
And they're going through these construction buildings and all these like I-beams. God, what a nightmare that must have been to animate.
Yeah, I think they were really showing off and really putting some extra elbow grease into it, especially compared to the next episode where it seems more like what I remember a cartoon to look like.
Well, the rocket Christmas tree wasn't animated to your to your high standards.
But I mean, like that whole sequence. There's one sequence where Man-Bat is dragging Batman behind him, and they do this beautiful shot where it's like you see the blimp, and then a close-up of Man-Bat comes into frame, and then he just veers off and like goes over the thing and is dragging him behind. It's really nice. You don't see that in most television shows.
Yeah, I really, I don't know how you feel. I really love simple animation tricks that get a lot of play. Like when people when they move two layers. They used to do it in like old Super Nintendo games. Mm-hmm. Even though it's just two layers moving and the perspective isn't even changing, it just has that. It really does pop for some reason. Yeah. And a quick little simple animation of Batman's cape fluttering, even if you run it on loop, really goes a long way. Yeah,
there's that great shot. There's a down shot of Man-Bat pulling Batman, and it's all you see. The only movement is the fluttering of his cape. Right. And all they probably did was they just moved the highlights and shuffled them around. But it works totally. Yeah. It works perfectly. Like
4 cells just on loop, basically, for half a second, and it totally reads.
Yeah, they really went out of their way to make this one look good.
Yeah, there was one shot where you were behind him, Batman. So he was doing this like F-14 military plane, almost like roll, and his cape was fluttering around his ankles, and you could see that seemed like a nightmare to animate, but looked amazing. Yeah.
And we get our first, as I said earlier, look at some of the side characters that are going to be big deals, like Commissioner Gordon and Bullock. I think, I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure this is Bullock didn't exist before this show, and I'm pretty sure he exists in the comics now, right? I know he's on Gotham, I think.
Yeah, well, he's in mine.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, but I haven't read a whole lot of what came before me, as we've established before. I thought that Bullock was in the Tim Burton, but you pointed out it was
Eckhart,
who was a Bullock swipe.
Yep, who was also the Porkins, the X-wing pilot from Star Wars.
Oh yeah, which one was he?
The fat one.
You body shaming?
No, it's just pick him out with a silhouette.
But he was actually fat. Yeah.
But
and he died because of it.
Well, I don't know about that. That's very possible. They do a good job here of again defining who these characters are going to be. Like Bullock is very aggressive,
no shit,
doesn't like Batman.
Yeah.
Gordon is somewhere in the middle where he appreciates what Batman's doing, but he's not entirely on board because as soon as it comes down to this looks like it's Batman, Gordon goes after him. Yeah. Which is a nice touch. He's not just the old guy who calls the red phone.
Yep. No, and I thought the mayor too was nice to see him introduced very early on. Yep. He answers for the city. He's not sure about vigilantism, and Gordon seems to think that he understands Batman in a small way, saying that this isn't his style or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I work Gordon and the mayor into my book too, and in my book, Gordon is really pushed hard to consider why he never arrests Batman. Yeah. And everyone around him makes some really compelling arguments about how lax Gordon has been and why it might have cost Gotham more than it's worth, and even Gordon's forced to reassess his free pass that he seems to give Batman all the time.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of the animated series in my book. I'll probably say that a lot throughout this podcast.
And we get a first look at Harvey Dent too, a pre-Two-Face Harvey Dent, which
Yeah.
is I always appreciate when they drop in a pre-Two-Face Harvey Dent because it's always like it's the kind of foreshadowing that I get really excited about because they're like, don't worry, it's like confirming that they know what they're doing.
Right.
Like even in the Tim Burton Batman, Harvey Dent shows up in there. It's like, that's what's going to happen, even though unfortunately it didn't. But
did Harvey have a coin?
He did
In that scene. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I listened to an extra commentary at some point about that episode, and they made the conscious decision to hold off on Harvey Dent because they wanted to introduce him first. They didn't want to introduce him at the beginning of the episode, and by the end, he's changed.
Right.
They didn't think that the emotional commitment was there if they rushed it like that.
Which is something that is pretty unique for the show. I mean, if you go back to the Batman, the 60s show, they didn't give a shit about that. It was just villain of the week,
Right.
I mean, even here, you're not just getting Man-Bat. It's not just, he's here, and, he's got to fight him, and that's it. You actually get story. You get story behind the character. You get a wife character. And I think it's really great. I don't love the execution, but I like the intent. What do you think of the story and how it plays out?
You were mentioning when we had lunch that you weren't too hot on the writing. I was going to ask you what that meant.
Well, I don't think Man-Bat is very fleshed out. I think the early stuff you get with him is great. The mystery behind him is great. But when you find out exactly like what his motivation is, I feel like it's kind of rushed. Very quick.
It's very, very pulp. Like it might have cut the mustard back in the 1950s or whatever. That was the only thing that I felt very dated in a bad way about the episode was the villain's motivation. And I understand that they had to. The villain was really not the point of the episode. It was to introduce Batman.
Right.
So they didn't want to give too much time to it, but even what little they did was a little unsatisfying. Yeah,
and compared to the comic, Man-Bat's origin is that it's the same sort of Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing, but it's more of like a Hulk situation where Kirk Langstrom is, I believe, it's been so long since they've changed so many times, but I believe the original origin is that he was searching for a way to infuse the bat sonar hearing into humans in order to help deaf people. And so he then tests the thing on himself or whatever, and that's what turns him into Man-Bat.
I'm sorry, wait, that's the comic?
Yeah, I believe so.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
I wish they had done that instead of making him just obsessed with bats, and these are the next evolutionary steps.
Yeah, it's like, I even, watching it last night, I was like, really? That's it? Because he just kind of comes in, and he has some monologue where he says something to the effect of, he accidentally discovered this cross between bats and humans, and now I am that thing.
Yeah, he didn't know what to do with it, and I don't know.
Yeah, and then he's just like, and I tested it on myself, and now like he's very clearly an arch villain. Yeah, and
they're too archy, both him and his father-in-law or whatever.
Yeah, and in the comics he's more like I guess the Hulk isn't the right analogy, more like the Lizard, the Spider-Man villain. Right. Who's the doctor who's trying to fix his arm kind of thing. And I think it's a lot more like that. Yeah. Which is a shame, because that's, for me, if we want to get into the one thing we would change, I think that's what the one thing I would change is I would maybe give, for kids, it doesn't matter. Right. They're not going to catch this stuff. But looking at it from analytically now, that's the one thing I would change that I think would add a little bit more weight and a little bit more punch to this episode. Yeah. What about you? What would you change? Or anything?
Yeah, I think you made a good point. I'm convinced that the comic book origin of Man-Bat would have been better, less arch villainy, just as brief, and it wouldn't quite fall apart so much on analyzation. Yeah, I mean, I hate to even point anything out wrong with it, because this episode is firing on all cylinders, except for a few tiny niggles, basically.
Yeah.
I really liked. I mean, they showed off the chops of what Gotham is, what kind of action this cartoon's gonna have. They showed Batman. They showed the way he fights. They showed the height of Gotham up to those blimps. They had a nice shot with the Batmobile. They really framed everything very well. Just in case the executives weren't convinced by this pitch, this pilot episode certainly hits all its marks, and it convinced.
Definitely.
I'm sure, obviously, it was designed to show the viewers that they're not messing around here. So
yeah, and again, I'm surprised at how dark and kind of scary it is too, because the scene where Langstrom, you watch him turn into Man-Bat, that's creepy as shit, man.
Oh yeah.
Like, you get like full frame, the teeth come out and like he tears through the clothes, and it's pretty creepy.
Yeah. Yet his pants are still on.
Yeah.
Just
well,
like
they're always,
Well, it's funny. So later on, spoilers. It's his daughter who is the Man-Bat, and when she hulks out, she conveniently has a pink tube top that manages to stay intact.
Yeah. There's a big industry for stretchy lycra pants in the superhero world. So
yeah, superhero. So my favorite question to ask with these podcasts is, as an artist, which sequence or which frame would you take out of the cartoon? What would you like to have drawn, or what would you like to redraw and redo your way?
If I had to redo a scene, that's tough. This episode is just so well done.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I could do it better, but that chase sequence when he's dragging Batman behind him is what I can imagine would be so much fun to draw.
Yeah, so because of animation, they can obviously tackle that in a lot more compelling way because they have movement on their side. With still life drawings or whatever panels. Like, even with moment-to-moment storytelling, it would not feel that exciting, I feel.
Yeah.
But you could maybe play around with some interesting illustration ideas, like panel borders and those I-beams. As you flip the page, there's a lot of cool ideas that you could do if you had the time and space, I think, to handle that in a different way. Like, that's the thing, I think, the difference between comics and animation is comics can do things that animation cannot do, and vice versa. So, the scene I would probably draw or really like to sink my teeth into might be just the beginning with the blimp and the haze and Gotham as a quiet city, and I'd probably show Batman hidden somewhere about to break into this scene for real. I'd love to have like a print of that, or really like just a 2-page spread that just takes your breath away. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I think that about covers this episode. Do you want to give it a arbitrary rating?
Yeah. Okay. So 1 through 5, huh?
Yeah.
Why don't you go first?
I would give it a 4 because I think it's a great introduction to the show.
Yeah.
The animation's amazing. You get a great idea of the world and the characters, and my only real quibble is the villain could have been fleshed out a little bit more.
Right,
Aside from that, I think it's a solid triple.
Yeah. I feel that for me, if there's 100 episodes, which I think there's around then, I think maybe only 10 of them should get 5s, and then there should be 20 4s and all the way down. So I don't think this is a top 10.
Yeah.
In other words, I think it's amazing, so I'm going to go 4.
Yeah. And it's interesting when I think back to this show, I always remember the ones that didn't feature characters the villains that I really knew were always the ones that I kind of didn't really care about. This one was I think, thinking back before I watched it again, this is one where I was like, Man-Bat, I don't really care. But when I actually sat down and watched it, I was like, oh, this is really good. I don't know if it would be a top 10 one for me, but it's really, really great.
It's funny, the episodes that I always felt drawn to were not with the supervillains. It was some weird small like I have Batman in my basement.
Oh,
which is a really neat idea. Yeah. And then there's one where there's like a divorced father is he's got an invisible cloak and he's using it to visit his daughter, which he's not allowed legally to have contact with. And she thinks he's an imaginary friend, and Batman ends up finding out. And it's such a small story that hints at domestic abuse. And it's the kind of thing that you would think Batman wouldn't waste his time on because there's the Jokers out there. But I love those small slice of life stories. And they managed to throw in a lot very early on. Like, you think that they would tackle Clayface immediately, but instead they do a Grey Ghost episode, which is coming up.
Well, again, that's, I think, one of the benefits of the character is he can be a symbol for other things or a metaphor for other things as much as he can be literally punching someone in the face, you know? Right. So you can do a domestic abuse story with Batman where he's not just beating the crap out of people, right? And it still works, you know?
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it for this episode. I'll play a quick clip, and then we'll come back and talk about Christmas with the Joker. Alrighty, so this episode is Christmas with the Joker, directed by Kent Butterworth, written by Eddie Gorodetsky, and the plot is, after escaping Arkham Asylum on Christmas Eve, the Joker takes over Gotham's airwaves and terrorizes the city for a crime. I can't read. He challenges Batman and Robin to find his hidden TV studio and free his hostages, Commissioner Gordon, Detective Bullock, and Summer Gleason before midnight. Yeah.
I have really mixed feelings about this episode.
Yeah, me too.
I can say from the beginning, I hate the beginning, where Joker escapes a rocket Christmas tree. Like, I know this is a kid's cartoon, but that defies even cartoon logic. I think they could have nixed that completely and just had Joker already on the loose or something.
Yeah, it's my, just to jump to the end, my biggest issue with this episode is that it feels like an episode of the 60s show with the veneer of the modern cartoon on it.
Right, yeah.
Because the Joker he's very over the top. I mean, the Joker is always over the top. I mean, right. But it's like over the top in the campy 60s way where, the first scene is him escaping Arkham Asylum in a rocket Christmas tree, which is very similar to in I think the first episode with the Joker in the 60s show. He's like playing baseball or softball, and he stands on the pitcher's mound, and it like springs him over the wall or some shit like that.
Maybe it was a nod to that.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But I mean, but they continue that stuff where like they've got the giant walking nutcrackers and stuff, and it's very. And Robin makes a couple quips that are like kind of very reminiscent of the '60s show.
To geek out, the thing I love is he's trying to get Batman to watch It's a Wonderful Life.
Robin?
And, I love how Bruce keeps saying, I could never get past the title.
Yeah.
He just clearly is not after A Wonderful Life. I mean, it's not very thinly veiled.
Right.
But even at the end, when they finish the movie, the shot on their screen is this Liberty Bell, which I think Republic Pictures owns the rights to It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. It's a studio that went bankrupt or whatever, or shut down in the 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. And somebody else owns the rights to that movie now. But I love how they even got the correct final shot from that movie to put on the screen. And even if it's a small thing, like I geeked out about that a little bit. Yeah,
it's a great instant recognition because it's a very famous final shot.
Yeah.
And, you bring up a point that I wanted to talk about. This episode, the shows tend to do this when they get to holiday episodes where there's always one character who's more cynical about it than the other, and usually by the end of the episode, they're kind of like, you know what, Christmas isn't really that bad.
You're right.
But it made me think, like, do you think Batman is a cynical character by nature? Is his outlook in this episode where he's constantly always expecting the worst out of people, is that just how he is?
I don't know. When he catches the Joker, he has kind of a smile on his face at the end. Almost like he's not taking it very seriously, even though he just had been shot at for the last 15 minutes. I don't know if this version of Batman is that cynical. I think he becomes that cynical when season 4 happens in Justice League. He becomes very gruff and grim.
Yeah. What about just as a general concept of the character? In any form.
What do you think?
I don't know. It's a tough call because you have to imagine that he's doing what he's doing because he's not cynical, because he does kind of... I guess that's where you kind of get the really good juxtaposition between Superman and Batman. Ideally.
Right.
Anyway. Because Superman traditionally anyway sees the best in people, and Batman is always the one who's going to be, when someone pulls a fast one, he's going to be like, "See, I told you so." He's going to be the one who expects the worst.
Yeah.
And I think he probably has to be that cynical to an extent in order to do what he does. Because if he expected the best out of people, then he would not be as hard on people as he is.
It occurs to me that if we created a drinking game for this podcast, and every time you mention the bad Batman Superman movie, you have to take a drink, I don't think you would last to the end of the episodes.
What are you talking about? I love that movie. It was great. Moving on.
I walked out, man. Fuck that movie.
Yeah, I was not a fan. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
I could go off all day on what I didn't like about that movie. I think he is fairly cynical in general. And that's what makes, I should not even to bring Superman into the equation. The Batman and Robin dynamic works the best because Robin is generally the inverse in attitude. He's a lot more freewheeling and kind of happy. Right.
Yeah. So it's funny. There's two places I want to go with this, but I'll go with the Robin angle. I never really liked this version of Robin. He was too jokey, joke kind of a kid, and I know what they were trying to do, but it wasn't until they brought in Tim Drake in season 4 that I started to really like Robin.
Yeah.
Because that version of Robin, the kid, was a different origin story. He wasn't as messed up as Dick was.
Yeah.
Like, Dick had some real daddy issues, and even though Drake has his own issues, he seemed to have a healthy distance from them, and he didn't let Batman get to him.
Yeah.
He just kind of let it roll off his shoulders, whereas Dick was looking for a lot from Bruce, and he didn't get it, and the wedge between them just grows and grows and grows, basically.
And they really kind of lean into that later on when he becomes Nightwing. He's not really the same character. He's a lot... Yeah. He's more dark.
Yeah.
He's much darker as Nightwing.
Yeah, hence the mullet.
Yeah, that stupid ponytail.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say was, you talk about Bruce being cynical. So, in my version of the comic that I'm writing, what I think is, well, at least my version, Bruce is not motivated to fight crime because of the death of his parents. He thinks he is. But one thing in my book that the Joker or Batgirl, I don't know who yet, points out to him is, you're not doing this for your parents. You're not doing it for Gotham. You're doing it for Alfred. And Alfred's weight in Bruce's life is huge. I mean, he's obviously a surrogate father. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason he fights crime is just to please his father figure, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been done before.
Yeah, that's interesting because I mean, it kind of gets into how you feel, or I should say, what you feel Alfred contributes or doesn't contribute.
Right.
Because, is he the kind of Alfred where, like he's helping build the machinery and build the bat suits and shit like that.
Oh yeah.
Or I should just even to back it up to even a simpler idea.
Right.
Does he condone what's going on, or does he hate it? Or is it some? Because
it's true.
You know what I mean?
There's different versions too.
Yeah.
There's some versions of Alfred that wants Bruce to stop. Some will fix Bruce's car, and I'm sure there's a version that's put on the suit to go out and save Bruce.
I know in the 60s Batman, occasionally when Bruce was off doing something else, Robin and Alfred would take the Batmobile out, I believe because Robin couldn't drive. So Alfred would put on like a little, Kato mask and drive the Batmobile.
Robin, you're already breaking a lot of laws by being a vigilante in the first place. Not to mention like assault, reckless endangerment. I mean, what else could you charge Robin with? I don't think driving without a license is ever really going to...
Yeah.
That's funny, though.
But again, in this episode, the way they illustrate Alfred is kind of like... He's kind of a prick.
Yeah.
He's very condescending.
Yeah, he is.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
He's very much... They treat him very much like a butler and like nothing more than a butler.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the different versions of Alfred. There's like a retired MI6 version.
Yeah, that's the new hip version.
Yep.
Now.
And then there's just Butler Alfred, who's mostly a moral compass, which I think is the one I'm most comfortable with.
It's more of like the Michael Caine kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about Joker then.
Yeah,
and about Mark Hamill.
Definitely. Yeah, I know that the book you're doing, The Joker, has a very...
So this might be coming out before my book is released, so don't spoil certain things. If you
no, I'm not. I wasn't going to say any specifics, cool. But I know you have an attachment to the character.
Right.
How does this Joker compare? Like, is this your ideal of the Joker that they show in this cartoon, in this show?
My version of the Joker is a reversion of this.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't. I never really was a Joker fan.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts on him are, but even as a kid, I felt, because my basis of Batman mainly comes from this cartoon, and I always felt the Joker was kind of goofy. He didn't really pose a real threat to Batman. He was always making stupid, silly mistakes. Even in this one, there's a pie that could have been a bomb, and then Batman could have been dead.
Or at the very least, an acid pie.
Yeah, an acid pie. That sounds like a sex move.
Yeah, the Joker acid pie.
Oh,
yeah.
God, my God.
Kid show.
This is
Kid
going into a dark place, man. I notice when we say something uncomfortable, looking for a pause, you drink your drink really loudly.
Yeah, that's the joke.
No, I'm just going to point it out.
Yeah, I think the way that they... obviously, Mark Hamill just from the get-go is rocket sauce.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, the Joker, I think the reason that he works so well as a foil to Batman is he also is very malleable, story to story, where,
right.
You can make him, you can lean into the clown aspect, you can lean into the crime aspect, you can kind of dial him down if you want something. I mean, just look at the ways he's been portrayed in all media. I mean,
right.
The Heath Ledger Joker is nothing like the Jack Nicholson Joker, which is, well, Jack Nicholson's probably closer to the 60s one than people think that he is, but still.
Jared Leto is too. I know you haven't seen
Is he really?
Suicide.
I haven't seen Suicide Squad yet.
Side note, I don't think he's really done a new Joker at all.
Yeah.
I think it's just a 60s giggly version.
Interesting.
With more knives.
But, I think you can... The reason that he's such a good foil for Batman, for me anyway, is that he's not like the mirror image of Batman,
mm-hmm.
but he's the one, I think, that understands Batman enough that he will constantly keep pushing and
right.
keep pushing and keep pushing to try and find that line.
Right.
And their whole back and forth is, will Batman ever push back to the extent that the Joker is pushing him?
Mm-hmm.
And once Batman does, then the Joker wins,
Right.
Which is not, based on this episode, is not what they're really getting into, but
right.
just ideally, that's how the Joker works for me.
Yeah. Well, when I saw the Chris Nolan movies, that the Heath Ledger, as you almost called him, your favorite porn star, that was a new version of Joker that I was blown away by. Like, I'd never considered him to be that,
Mm-hmm.
But I also really like the Jack Nicholson version too. So I don't know what my hang up with the Joker is, but you
want me to ruin The Dark Knight for you forever? I was watching The Dark Knight with my mom, and about halfway through, she goes, Heath Ledger sounds just like Daffy Duck. And then from that point on, I was like, oh, God damn it. Now all I can hear in my head is Daffy Duck.
Yeah.
And he does sound a lot like Daffy Duck.
I agree. Your mom ruins everything. You've actually never talked about your mom.
She's a very nice lady.
Okay. Well, it's Warner Brothers, so Daffy Duck and
that's true.
Joker,
maybe it's an homage.
Which came first, I wonder.
That's a good question. That's for a different podcast.
Yep, we'll think about it and get back to you later.
But yeah, Mark Hamill, I think this is, as much as I don't really care for the story here, because it's very arch and very
right.
classic, what you'd expect from the Joker.
Right.
This is like the perfect way to introduce you to the Mark Hamill Joker, because he goes from 0 to 100 and all the way back again.
Yeah.
He doesn't do as much of the stuff he does later, which is the stuff I really like,
mm-hmm.
where he does that lower register Joker where he's pissed off at Harley or something like that. I love that lower register Joker.
Yeah.
This is more high octane.
Yeah.
But he does pretty much all of it here.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think that both of these episodes don't go too deep with the characters. I think they're very much on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And the low register Joker is another layer. And to get there, you need Harley there, or you need something to go wrong, or you need to know another side of Joker to get why, and it is much better.
Yeah.
But I think just 2 episodes in, we're mostly on the surface with most of these characters still.
Yeah. What do you think of his design?
Man, the yellow teeth and the yellow eyes and the hood ornament haircut. I don't love it, but I didn't love the season 4 version either.
Yeah, where they give him those like really beady black eyes and they get rid of the smile, the red lips and stuff. Yeah, it's tough. I actually think this Joker works better in stills than he does in the cartoon, because you can, or like if you get a toy of this Joker, it looks great.
Right.
But I think when he starts moving, he can get a little bit kind of wobbly and
the
wobbly.
Proportions are so weird on his face with his nose and his hair. It's I think that the animators were still figuring him out.
Yeah,
to some degree.
Staying on design for a minute, I do like that they basically used the Tim Drake Robin costume, but put it on Dick Grayson.
Right.
Which makes sense, because I mean the Dick Grayson Robin costume is preposterous.
Right.
And it's also, for anybody reading the comics, it's an easy 1-to-1.
Wait, is that with the bells on his stockings? Or...
Yeah, he's got like the Dick Grayson, he's got the short shorts.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You know, the bare legs and like the little Peter Pan boots. And the all yellow cape instead of the black cape with the yellow inside.
You remember there was a parody of Batman on Tiny Toons, and they had Bat Duck and his sidekick Decoy.
I do remember that, actually. Good show.
The yellow makes sense, man.
Yeah, they knew those guys on Tiny Toons knew what they were talking about when it came to Batman. But yeah, that reminds me, like, they always do that. They tend to do that sometimes when there's multiple versions of a character. They kind of consolidate it. Mm-hmm. I know there was a very short-lived, and by short-lived, I think they only shot the pilot of a live-action Justice League show that in the 90s. And the Green Lantern that they had on the show was, he dressed like Guy Gardner, and he had the backstory of Hal Jordan, but his name was Kyle Rayner. So they took 3 different Green Lanterns and just meshed them together.
Was Guy Gardner the guy with the bowl cut?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. He had like the vest, like a green vest. Yeah.
Why don't they call him Guy Bowl Cut? Don't answer that.
Anyway.
Oh, man. These are the jokes. So one scene that I really loved in this was
Operation Cause and Effect.
Wait, okay, we'll go to that first.
No, you finished.
I'm out of drinks. That way I can't do your punchline shtick. So when they're in the toy house or LAFCO factory, first of all, why doesn't Batman just knock over every joke store related warehouse?
Yeah, World's Greatest Detective, LAFCO factory should be the first place he looks every time.
In driving the Batmobile, Batman did know an unusual amount about like Patty P. herself or whoever it was. He knew they were discontinued. He knew where to go at the factory. No GPS, just knew how to get there. And when they get there, the music from Nutcracker starts playing.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a big Tchaikovsky fan. I love classical music in general, but Tchaikovsky, that soundtrack to that show is better than the show itself. Mm-hmm. And when you hear like the and the Batman grabs a bat and he starts knocking these things over. And I know they're big, dumb, stupid robots and toys, but I really love that idea. And with that soundtrack, it was really perfect.
Oh, yeah, that scene's great. I mean, it does... When I say it is reminiscent of the 60s show, it kind of is, but I mean, it still works. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, this cartoon, it gives you that sort of leeway where crazy shit like this can happen and you don't have to explain it. Yeah. You know, like, how did the Joker turn the observatory into a cannon?
Yeah. But, okay, well, the Christmas tree thing throws us at the beginning. Yeah. Well, I think there's good 60s and there's bad 60s.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. It's like porn. I know it when I see it. I see it a lot with Heath Ledger.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that music too because that's like a great piece because, you know, it's a Christmas episode, the Nutcracker thing, so they're starting off like that. But as the battle intensifies, she changes the key and turns it into a minor melody, and just adds bits and pieces here and there to amplify. So you can still recognize it as the Nutcracker song, but she's changing it enough to make it fit the action and the tension of the scene, which is really great. And
they even switched to another song from that soundtrack. Yep, Dance of the Gummy Shoe Fairies or whatever. It's quicker. It's more like the Home Alone music, like da 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 da. Yeah, the whole scene was really neat, but to me it was totally 60s, but it was good 60s, and I don't know why it works for me, but the Christmas tree rocket does not.
Yeah. I love Robin wears a watch under his gloves.
Oh yeah, well,
Which is a great way to get around. I know the Simpsons do this a lot.
Whenever Homer needs to check the time.
Yep. Whenever Homer has a watch,
yeah,
it needs to check the time. The shot before he checks his watch, he's wearing a watch, and then the minute he's done checking the time, the watch is gone.
They kind of do it with Bender in Futurama.
Yeah.
Whatever button or cord, whatever he needs to be inside his chest is just there, as if he always had a little ticker timer, little light, and then immediately when it's not being used, it's gone.
Yep. Yeah, that's the beauty of animation.
Oh man.
Do you have anything in particular you'd change in this?
Oh yeah. What scene would you like to draw or redraw?
I would redraw the Joker's escape into something a little bit more interesting.
Right. Oh, that's a good way to take the question.
Yeah.
How would you? What's an interesting way for Joker to get out of Gotham?
I like it better when you don't see how he gets out.
Right.
So, like, take the Killing Joke,
yeah,
where he's just gone and he's got that guy in there who's taken his place and he's wearing Joker makeup.
Right.
I like when you see the result of him escaping.
That's good.
So, like, let's say it was that scene they're going through Arkham Asylum, and then you get to a room where just like everybody in there has like Smilex grins on or something, and it's just like, oh, he's just gone. You don't need to know exactly how he got out, but that he did.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I would have him escape by going through the nativity scene, taking the cross of Jesus Christ, which also happens to be a pogo stick, and then he jumps,
flipping it over, so it's an upside down cross, so he can put his feet on the bottom.
Exactly, man. Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? And then he would get out that way.
That's one way to do it.
Oh man, there's a cover.
That would have been a dark episode. I don't know if that makes it past the censors.
I did a book a while back called Punk Rock Jesus, which is very atheistic, I guess, and most of the covers feature an upside down cross. So I might be making a lot of Jesus jokes in this podcast. Also, I have a lot of Christian readers. I'm just going to say that right now.
It's not at all that you're a one-trick pony.
No, that's true. I'm just basically rehashing Punk Rock Jesus with the Joker.
Yeah, that's how you do it. I mean, that's how that's the secret to success. Do the same, the thing that works over and over and over again.
Oh yeah, it works for fill in name of artist that you don't want to mention here.
Yeah.
The scene I might redraw is oh man, I was gonna say the Tchaikovsky scene, but it doesn't work as a comic book because you need the sound, you need the music. Yeah. I guess I go with the Jesus Nativity pogo stick.
Yeah, I think like overall it's a little bit clunky towards the end.
Yeah.
It's a great, the episode in general is a great showcase for Mark Hamill. Mm-hmm. And you get some nice stuff with Batman and Robin. Another one where you don't get any no
backstory at all.
Yeah, you don't get any backstory on the Joker or Robin. They're just already there.
Right.
So you get to see the it's actually a good episode to start a Batman and Robin with, because you get that instant ideology difference,
Right.
And the Joker, like I said, he gets 0 to 100, so you get everything from him right away.
Okay.
They do a good job. Well, let's go to the rating. What would you rate this episode?
Okay. Are we playing a clip before the rating or after? Okay.
Probably not at all.
All right.
The amount of editing I want to do here is very limited.
We did a rating. You did a clip for
that was just to break the two episodes.
Oh, that makes sense. Smart man. Okay, I'm gonna go for a. I'm gonna go 2, a high 2.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think I'm gonna go 3, just because again I think it's a good starting point for a lot of the stuff you get later. The Mark Hamill's, he's great. The Batman and Robin stuff is good. It could probably be, there's a better story in there, I think, than they give you. But I think my 3 comes from just the characters.
Without the opening scene, I think I'd go strong 3. Yeah. Maybe I'll go 3. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I had something else to say that I was going to wait till we rated, and now I forgot what it is. So I guess we're done.
Clever. Maybe you're going to take a nice dramatic sip.
Only at the right time. Anyway, that's going to do it for us on this episode. Next time, we will be watching Nothing to Fear and The Last Laugh, which is a Scarecrow episode and another Joker episode. So those should be pretty interesting.
Nice. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much. If you're listening on iTunes, please give us a rating or review. That would be awesome. And thanks, Sean, and we'll see you next time.